Hello and welcome to the 47th episode of When I Was Your Age, a podcast celebrating the careers, callings, and creativity of some friends of mine. I'm your host, Roland Parker, and as always, it is a joy, a pleasure, and a treat to have you here. Today's guest is Sarah Cain. I'm excited to talk to her about working with wildlife in all different parts of the country, and especially in her new job. Before we get started with Sarah, though, I do have a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure you follow the Instagram. We are currently at 1,552 followers, and that means a lot for the support in and out each week. If you are here for the first time, consider giving us a follow. You can do that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Podcasts. You can go to all of those places. It's pretty easy. And if you're more in the visual game, you don't want to listen to the podcast, you want to see our shining faces as this is going on, you can get on Spotify and watch the video there. And we have episodes on YouTube, so you can go over there if you need to change it up. All of the links to those places are available in the link tree in the Instagram bio if you need to get there. And without further ado, we'll bring Sarah into the stream. Sarah, how's it going with you? Oh my gosh, I can't turn off my music fast enough.
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good. So it's funny, this is episode 47, and it's funny and silly the things that I still mess up on. I feel like I should be better at it by now.
Can I add something to the intro for the
Yeah,
audience?
what is it?
God sister, his one and only God sister is on
That's
the
very
pod.
true. Yes. That was a key thing. I was gonna kind of leave it up to you for the how do we know each other bit. I wanted to see about that at the end of the get to know you, but yes. So, and I want to maybe I'll have this as a poll for the episode, but Sarah, we have referred to each other as God brother and God sister because we are the children of our godparents, right?
Mhm.
Respectively. So I have always said God brother, God sister, and I have kind of come to the realization that that is not necessarily how most people carry themselves.
We
Have
made
you
this
also?
up. I don't
Yeah.
I've heard that as well. I do the same thing with you and Max, and then one time one of my friends was like, "You're who?" I was like, "My god brother." And they're like, "No one ever says that."
Hmm.
So, I don't know where it got lost in translation with us, and our families, but I will forever refer to you as my god brother and my godmother, and I think it's hilarious when I, talk to my godfather and pretend like I'm in the movie.
Yep. Exactly. It's not something that I'm willing to let go, but if I was on the outside and I heard somebody describe it that way, I'd be like, that sounds a little bit like a cult to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just become so normalized that when you're outside of our families, people are like, "What are you talking about?"
But
But
yeah,
I won't let it go. No,
no,
absolutely
me
not.
either.
You're the my
It,
only oldest, my older brothers, because I am the oldest of my family. So
there
I'm
you go.
not
Yeah,
letting go of my older god brothers.
it's that's right. I shan't let it go. I cling to it tightly. Well, if you guys aren't already, make sure that you go follow Sarah on Instagram. You can do that here. We've got the handle up on the stream. We'll have it in the show description as well in the notes there. Um, Tell me about your username. Have you had any silly usernames ever?
Oh, well, Sarah Cain is a very common name, I've been
Okay.
told. Um, and so that's where the A had to come in because at Sarah Cain was taken, at Sarah underscore Cain was taken. Um, when you try to look me up, there's a movie called Saving Sarah Cain. So in terms of the username game, I felt like I've always been fighting that. I would say the most embarrassing nickname I ever had, which turned into a username, was and it's gonna sound weird, but just it was the times. So I played softball, and I like to think I was a good hitter. That was my favorite thing to do, and I was called Slugger. Now I don't know if that's super politically correct nowadays, um, but Slugger 147. Don't look it up.
Nice.
It may still be active,
Okay.
but that was my worst. What was
Nice.
yours? I don't think I can remember.
Big one for me. It was so like I pretty young on like onwards. It was Rolo was like Rolo like the candies, where
Hmm.
that was like my nickname like growing up playing sports. But then the username I created out of that was Rolo DA, like Rolo da Beast. So all no capital letters in there. It's just Rolo da Beast. Um, so yeah, that was like my Xbox 360 like name. It didn't make it very far, but it was there, and it's probably not completely scrubbed from the internet. Um, so yeah,
I was trying to remember what
that
your me name was, because
my me name.
if the pod listeners don't know, that is a lot of where God brother God sister bonding happened was over the Wii
Oh
at
yeah,
the Parker
no doubt.
house.
Oh yeah, I remember
I think it might
like
have been Rolo,
freaking.
maybe.
It's a could have been. That's a that seems likely. I remember freaking out in our basement with like trying to get like the highest score possible on bowling. Like bowling for me is like the peak like Wii experience. Obviously there are other games that are probably better, but like that feature on Wii Sports specifically, that was kind of what I think of like growing up and playing on the Nintendo Wii.
Yeah, I feel like it was Wii Sports got really intense in the household, and then Mario Kart. And then I weirdly have this memory of Spider-Man Friend or Foe. If you
Oh,
remember that one,
oh, I
that
know it
you
well.
guys were
Yes.
really into that. And you guys donated or your, but now is mine. Our Wii games that we have are a lot from the Parker household. And I found Friend or Foe the other day because
Mm,
I plugged my Wii back in. I'm back into the Wii game. For the
nice.
listeners of the pod, you should also get back into the Wii game. Bowling gets really intense, and baseball. Now that I know all of the different pitches, huge pitching duel between me and Luke this weekend. I won
Nice.
by 1 run.
Wow. Crucial. You got to have it. Yeah. I to I felt like bowling was a little more accessible because if you were playing with like four or five people, like you could still like take your turns through. But like with baseball, it's a little harder to like split up the turns and stuff.
That's true. Sharing that was really was hard because you're
Yeah.
not going to give up your Wiimote. You know how
No.
hard I fought to get that?
I remember like racing too to like get like the player one like um controller too. And I'm like, stop! What are you doing? Just peak
Oh,
like sibling like infighting. Um, well, I've got some get to know you questions, and we'll kind of jump in here. Where are you from, and where do you currently live?
well, I was recently listening to the Max Parker episode, and I liked the way he referred to where we're from as the 205. I thought
Nice.
that was great. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. Um, and oh, what were the other questions? I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and
Where do you currently live?
oh, I'm currently in Raleigh, North Carolina. That's a new
Excellent.
development. That's probably why I forgot. But yeah, currently in Raleigh.
There you go. I'm sure we'll get to that more. What do you do?
I'm an extension associate with North Carolina State Extension Forestry. So lots of lots of big words there. Basically, specifically with wildland and prescribed fire, I work on science communication, outreach, different workshops and trainings, trying to teach the people of the world why prescribed fire is important and why we need to use it as a management technique.
Yeah, definitely. Relevant too, especially with what's
Mhm.
going on out in California, I would think. Um,
Mhm.
how old are you?
I'm 24. I turn 25 in 4 days.
Whoa,
3 to 4 days. I can't remember. It's the 28th, so
whoa,
maybe three.
that is wild. Have you reached a point where you're like, like counting like in your head, like, am I actually this old or
Well, that's a funny thing because I feel very elitist about my birth year. When I tell people at work, it makes them sigh and cringe because I'm the youngest, obviously. Um, I was born in the year 2000. So even if I get Alzheimer, dementia, or something when I'm old, I'll always know how old I am, except for the month of January, obviously. But
Mm,
um, Yeah, I am doing I lose the weeks, you know?
Sure.
I thought it was Wednesday today, and it's Tuesday, so
Oh, I wished it was Wednesday today. I was hoping for it. Let's see. What piece of media are you currently enjoying? So, book, podcast, music, TV show. What are you diving into?
Ooh, well, I'll give maybe 2 answers. So with podcasts, um, I love, true crime. So Crime Junkie, I was recently re-listening to Serial, which then became it broke off into, like, a podcast about all the legalese and everything that happened with Adnan Syed, so I kinda nerded out about that a little bit. I'm my mother's daughter. And then with TV shows, um, yeah, I guess I just like crime. That doesn't say anything about me. I wanna let me preface, I like seeing how they solve the problems, but I
Okay.
really like Criminal Minds and actually Scandal, if you remember from ABC with,
Yes.
Kerry Washington, Tony Goldwyn. Um, yeah, I like those because, yeah, I like how they solve the different problems, and with Scandal, that's also kind of like a public information officer type thing. She's kind of figuring out the narratives and stuff, which is kind of on a very small level what I do with like Wildfire and Prescribed Fire.
Nice. Excellent. No, I could totally see that. Tabby and I watched Scandal a bit back, and I'm kind of fuzzy on the details, but I do remember really enjoying it. Um, what is something that you'd consider a luxurious necessity?
Ooh, a luxurious necessity. It's kind of like an oxymoron, right? Because if it's luxurious, then it shouldn't be a necessity. But
Mhm.
I
That's the
think
whole
that's the right
deal.
question to ask. Exactly. That you just blew my mind with that that phrase. Um, I think a luxurious necessity for me, um, probably is like a face mask or skincare stuff. I think it can be seen as something luxurious. I also just think it's necessary for people's well-being. But I think I've been really getting into investing in self-care because that manifests in other ways. So maybe like a good face mask because it also forces you to just calm down and be and be
Mm.
like this. Um, but yeah, that's maybe the one I would say. Ooh, what's your answer? You may have asked the other people this, but what's
Sure,
your answer?
sure. I always go back to, like, there's a minimum quality of, like, coffee that I'm willing to tolerate. So, like, for me, I won't be toting Maxwell House, like, around, and, like, if I see that that is, like, the option for coffee, then I won't be having it. I'll be going somewhere else. So I'm not like so snooty that I have to, have like $1 million machine and like make it like a very complicated way. But yeah, coffee is that way for me. And it's like just a part of like the routine in waking up and kind of setting the tone for the day. So that's what I always give as my example. Um, so for me, I think one or two people have said that or something similar. But I like your answer for the slowing down component.
Mhm. Yeah, and I get the coffee one. I don't like coffee. I'll have to refer to my friends on that, but chai. I like iced chai tea lattes, and they are so different from coffee shop to coffee shop, and it'll ruin a coffee shop experience for me. It'll be such a good environment, but if they don't have good chai, then so I can feel you on the coffee. Um,
Yeah,
if you can make a
absolutely.
choice, make the right one.
That's for sure. Do you have any bits that you're doing?
Any bits? Comedic bits?
It's a it kind of skews comedic for me. I associate bit um with there's a comedic element for sure. Doesn't necessarily have to be, but that's what I think of is, some you're doing it for yourself or some other audience.
Yeah, so I think this may speak a little bit to the brain rot of our age, but I think certain phrases get stuck in my head. It used to be Vine, RIP Vine, remember those. But yeah, certain like audio will repeat over and over. Um, I was trying to think of my one today. Um, the one that's coming to my mind actually is um, my friend posted the this guy was at a Jamba Juice. Shout out Merritt, she's gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. This guy was at a Jamba Juice and he was so excited about um, this Jamba flavor, and he said it's called Sip Sip Surprise Boba My Jamba, and I'll just say it'll just pop into my head. It'll just pop into my head. And it hadn't for a while, and then she posted when TikTok was going to be banned. She was posting like TikToks on Instagram for perpetuity, so she could refer back to them, and then it comes right back. Um, there's a girl who she ticks. She has Tourette's, but she has great like audios that she must like remember. So she goes, wind it up. I think that's hilarious. I think that's
Mhm.
awesome. And she's doing great stuff with, actually advocating for people with Tourette's. But like that's I mean, these audios are so I mean, I just think they're so funny. The issue is they'll come in at inopportune times. I can't just be
Yeah.
saying it at random parts of my workday.
Yeah, no, that's I totally relate to that. I think that someone else on the show has mentioned that before, specifically like with Vine, like just remembering them. I think that's a very common experience for like our generation. I have seen it described as like, oh, my current vocal stem is, and then they'll list off like what's the thing that they've been saying. I The song lyrics that just like cannot get out of my head right now is the Glorilla song. Uh, I'm from Memphis. What you know about me? Big GLO in the GLE. Like that. That
Yep.
does not leave. It is always rotating right now. It'll get out of my head eventually, but it's just like never not. Um, so
Is that the
that
same song that's like boom bop bam?
no, that's a Kendrick Lamar song.
Okay, that one
But
is a good one too. Oh,
That
Luke's
one
gonna
that
be
one
so
has
mad
not
that I
stuck
flipped
with
that.
me in the way that, like, I think that it has for a lot of people, but there are a lot of moments and lyrics from that album that that will pop in my head a lot. It's
Yeah, excited to
ripe
see
for the
him perform
picking
at the
with
Super
those.
Bowl.
Yeah, yeah. I don't care too much about the game. I
No.
was hoping for a different combination of teams, but it'll be fine. Um, so yeah,
Hey, listen, I could go on and on. Or what
I may have lost you there. Hold on. All right, are we back?
Yes.
Nice. Okay, what were you saying?
What NFL team do you subscribe to?
Ooh, I'm such a poser because I don't have like a real one for real.
Well, we didn't have one in
I
Alabama, so
Yeah, and like I think fairly common thread is like Titans um or Falcons. Like if you grew up in Birmingham, but I here lately I've kind of gravitated to the Ravens. But like they're even with that, like they're not necessarily like my number one. Like it kind of changes. Um, so I don't know. I there are certain like players and storylines that I'll find myself kind of gravitating to and liking and wanting to support and watch. Um, but I don't think that I would necessarily describe myself as having a team. I did see um, this was a couple of years now, but this guy he was tired of being I want to say a Browns fan, and he auctioned off his fanhood. He he was like, listen, highest bidder. I will be a fan of whatever team you want me to. Like you get to choose. And he just held an auction, and he was like, here it's a if this goes through and it's your team, I will go to this many home games, this many away games. I will wager this much money each season on the result of the games and yada yada yada. Um, so I thought that was a funny thing to do. I don't think that I'm quite as important enough to sell off my fanhood, especially because I don't have a team. But I always thought it was a pretty funny thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my background, a diehard Green Bay fan, and I only asked because I could go on a rant about the playoffs and how it just got so messed up because the Lions won our division, but then got all those injuries. So the Commanders snuck in to the NFC Championship. But if the Lions had injuries before any of the seeding happened, anyway, I won't get into that. But I do have my giant flag on my Packer flag on my wall right now.
There you go. Go Pack, go
Next year, that's right.
next year. Next year, I don't know. I don't. It's an interesting time to be an NFL fan because I feel like the parody is a much different scene. Like there's just everybody feels a lot closer. Like anybody can beat anybody. Um, even the teams that only win like twice a year, like they could beat any NFL team. Like technically, um,
I feel
and
like that's happening with college football too.
yeah,
I feel like we
yeah,
had a lot more upsets. Transfer portal's a whole different conversation, but it was kind of interesting that it was kind of a crapshoot who might win depending on the game. I'm looking
yeah,
at you, Vanderbilt.
yeah, yeah. No, no, definitely. It's a whole different experience. While watching these things, but I think it makes it a little bit more exciting. Um, yeah, so I've been kind of enjoying it. Um, getting us back to the get to know you questions. What song, given the opportunity, would you replace the national anthem with? It'd be any song on your playlist. Tell me about that.
Oh, what a good question. Um, oh my goodness. National anthem? It's just gonna be my national anthem. I'm just gonna pick something for
Yeah,
me.
there you go. Do you want to hear some
Um,
examples, or do you have one?
please do. Oh my gosh, please do. I have one in my head, but I'd love to see what the other submissions were.
Sure. Never been to Spain. Dancing Queen. Um, specifically, the performance by Fergie in the NBA Finals those years ago when it was really awful. Um,
Mhm.
we didn't start the fire.
Really good one.
Yeah, it was solid. Um, uh, My Tears Ricochet. I don't know why I pronounced that so weird. Fortunate Son, Freebird, Party in the USA, Hotel California, Sweet Caroline, Miss New Booty. So yeah, just a bunch of good answers. And kind of all different ways to think about it too. Like one, what would be hilarious, and two, like what's like a maybe like a decent like exchange, if I really had to do it.
I
No
think I
disrespect
would
to
go
Francis Scott
with
Key, but
Yeah, he really went hard with that one for sure. I think maybe I would go the thing that comes to my mind is "We Built This City." Um,
okay.
but I will add a caveat. We can use the original recording, but if you've ever seen the Muppets movie, they recorded their own version of "We Built This City," and
Cool.
it's in the Muppets movie, and the Muppets are very American. I feel like that mixes both a good song, but also love the Muppets
Nice. Okay.
covering that.
Do you know what what show or what movie or what production this version is from?
It
Because I want to
well,
find it and see if I can get it added.
yes,
But
yeah, deep cut. It was in the Muppets movie with Jason Segel, and Amy
okay.
Adams, and I think in the movie it's in the movie they're singing it, but the actual song is playing in the background. So I'll accept the actual song, because
Okay.
it was still playing in the Muppets movie. But I feel like that's a I feel like America's very rock and roll, right?
Nice.
You never know
Oh,
what we're gonna do next.
no doubt. All right. Well, if you want to hear Sarah's answer, uh, among others, then you can go to the link tree and you'll find a link that will bring you to this page here. Oh my goodness. So we're gonna bring it around to the camera eventually. Um, which is the Spotify playlist. We've got 3 saves. Seems kind of light, guys. It seems like we might need some more people to go follow that and get that saved. But
I'll go
it's
check it out.
building with each episode there, which is kind of a fun mosaic of culture there. Last question: how do we know each other?
So, yes, as mentioned at the beginning, you're my god brother. So, our moms are best friends and have been best friends for a very long time. So, and we've known each other all our lives. Yes. Um, I think I stayed at your house the day my brother was born. So when my
Sure,
mom and dad needed to
probably.
go to the hospital and she was in labor, I think I was over at your house, and then I was babysat a lot by Mr. Wade and Miss Tracy, who I still call that even though even after all these years. Um, and they have I like to say a lovely memory. I think it's probably not as lovely for them. Of the only thing I would watch over and over was Barney Christmas Story, just over and over again. So if you see Tracy Parker in public, do not mention Barney Christmas Story because it didn't calm me down. It amped me up, and I didn't want anything else. So over and over again.
We were
Um,
like again, more Barney Christmas
please.
Story. That's too funny.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm living that current with my own kids and just the things that they always want to listen to or watch. It it's an evergreen experience, I think, for parents. No matter where you are, they're always going to latch onto one something, and that's going to be the staple. It'll never go
because you've
away.
been hitting the Frozen hard, right?
Yeah, we've escaped from Frozen a little bit, but Trolls is like the big one right now. And that's
Mm.
like that when we're in the car, they only want to listen to the Trolls soundtrack, which is generally like a pretty good one. So that's nice. Um, but it does have one of my least favorite songs of all time, which is "Can't Stop the Feeling" by Justin
Oh,
Timberlake.
whew.
Yeah,
He sang that
which
at the
it
Super Bowl. Remember that?
yeah. I
So
just
good.
it's like a way overplayed song. And when I used to work at Old Smoky, like on the island, that it was part of like the startup sequence, like for the fountain. So like I would be there like at the register or working on the
Mm.
bar, and like I would just hear it probably 3 or 4 times a day. Um, so I didn't like it to
It
begin
gives
with,
me
and
happy vibes
yeah,
from
yes,
My
it's
Pharrell.
very much in
Yeah.
that genre of songs that if I only heard them a normal amount of times, I would probably like them. But they were beat to death by the radio, and I'll never want to hear them again. But I don't tell
Mhm.
my kids that. Okay, let's dive into your story a little bit. What exactly is the starting point of this journey, and how exactly did you end up in your current forestry position at NC State? So if we could draw maybe whatever as far back as you could draw the line to start me there and bring me up to current day.
Absolutely. Well, it goes pretty far back. So I would say um, the beginning of where I am now starts with my love for animals, and that starts at one of my first. It was my maybe my second or third trip to Disney World, going on Kilimanjaro safaris. It's a very famous home video of me yelling at my mom and dad to look at the mandrills. Um, Spoiler alert, they actually weren't mandrills. I think I just learned that new word. There are mandrills at Animal Kingdom. I don't think it was what I was pointing to, but I was so excited and so just enthralled by, especially Kilimanjaro. I mean, those animals are right up beside you, living in their natural environment. Um, and so I've loved animals for a really, really long time. And, going through high school and elementary school, as many dogs as possible that I could be around, I would be around. I thought for a while I wanted to be a vet. So if you did the career things in high school, I was like, oh, maybe a vet. And then I realized I can't really do, it would be hard to do like the surgeries and things. I just like hugging the animals. That's what I realized I liked, and like researching them and learning about their behavior. So that took me to one of I was going to say last semester in high school, but we don't do semesters, but near the end of the year. Um, if you remember Cullen Anderson, actually, you may know him. He spoke at our AP Bio class, and he talked about going to Auburn and working at the Deer Lab and doing research there, and how much he loved it, and loved his degree. And it was like a light bulb went off for me. Finally, I could tie my love to animals to something tangible that I could study. So I went to Auburn. I worked in the Auburn Deer Lab for all 4 years. So in the Deer Lab, what we did is we would sit up in tree stands, like what hunters sit up in, and then we would have dart guns and we darted the deer. And in the dart, there was tranquilizer. So the deer would go down, and then we would take antler measurements, body measurements, ectoparasite counts. So to the outside, similar to this God Brother God Sister we were talking to, I think it's awesome. To the outside, when I tell it to people, they are very confused and don't know why I did it. But it's really cool to see. It's a high fence facility, and it's been going for 20 years. So we have so much information on the physiology of deer out there, nutrition, genetics, and especially with the um, oncoming fear with CWD. So learning about diseases and stuff, and um, all of that. It was really, really cool and really important research. Yeah, so I did all of that, did some internships, did research at the Deer Lab. So I studied the efficacy of pellet count surveys to estimate deer density. So it was counting deer pellets, not super glamorous, but we do what we do for the craft. Um, and so
You gotta.
um, I did, yeah, so I did research with that, and that led to a couple other opportunities. So I got to work with the Smithsonian National Conservation Biology Institute, studying American kestrels. So we put little backpacks on these birds and studied the different habitats that they selected for. Since they're prey species, they eat prey, and they are predators. And so we were figuring out what they like to eat, but also what habitat they like to hang out in to find the little rats and mice that they ate. Then that, graduated from Auburn. That actually led me to full circle. I worked at Disney. I did an internship as a conservation education intern. So I was back in Animal Kingdom. And if you've ever been to Animal Kingdom or you've ever seen the movie Up, there are different badge locations all across the park with wilderness explorers. And they teach you about ecology, botany, fossils, all of these different cool science topics in sort of this digestible 5 to 10 minute conversation. You get your badge and you try to get all of your badges throughout the park to become a senior wilderness explorer. All of that to say, I finished that internship, and I knew for my field I needed to get a master's degree. So I searched around for possible master's degree programs. With wildlife, you have to be a research assistant, meaning that you have to conduct research alongside doing more classes to get your master's degree. So I found a really cool project with Oklahoma State University. I studied elk response to human recreation out in Montana. So I said Oklahoma, but my study site was actually in Montana, which was really cool. It was out in the Montana mountains, and I was studying this really low use area, and if and when humans were on there, maybe to hunt or to hike, how elk responded so that we could mitigate, human wildlife conflicts. And I found out while I was there that I loved research, but I loved telling people about what I did and getting them to care. That goes back to a little bit with Disney, I would have these great conversations with guests about tracking animals, putting collars on them, doing all of that, and to see how their faces changed and to get them to care about conservation really made me happy. So I did different science communication, little one-offs at my extracurriculars, if you will. So I helped create infographics for different papers that had maybe come out about different wildlife things or research that I had done. So an extracurricular project I did was evaluating motivators and barriers for female hunters in Oklahoma. Once I did that research, that was a cool social science side of what I did, and then made infographics, participated in news footage of that, as well as a written article. So kind of dipped my hand in the digital media and science communication and found that I really liked that, which then got me to North Carolina State, where I interviewed for this position that was really trying to get the science of wildfire, wildland fire, prescribed fire to the public so that not only to get them to care, but also to try to implement that on their properties. So yeah, so I started from loving all of these animals in Animal Kingdom at Disney World and just the environment around me, the natural environment around me. And now I'm just trying to convince people to feel the same way that I do about the environment, I guess is how I would summarize it.
No, that's amazing. I love the full circle moment that you mentioned of like identifying very early on, like this is something that you're passionate about, and then, getting to explore that at Disney World, like where you first kind of could identify that that was something that was important to you. Um, Amazing. Tell me about prescribed fire because obviously it's an important thing, but like how are you going about um, translating that data to someone or that information to someone who isn't working in these environments, like maybe that you're just like trying to convince them that it is important for their property or the surrounding areas. How do you go about like convincing them of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a quick background on sort of prescribed fire and fire in America. And, the whole world really is that historically, fire has always occurred on the landscape. We actually have a lot of fire dependent landscapes, a lot of our tall grass prairies out west. And Native Americans did a really great job. They actually did prescribe fire. They would set fire to their ag areas and where they lived, and they knew how to work with the environment. Um, with the onset of sort of colonialism and this industrial age, we had a real issue with fire suppression policies. So there were certain big fire events. I think the Chicago fire is one of them where buildings burned down and people were worried and freaking out. And so there was a whole fire suppression policy. And that's where Smokey Bear comes in. He was introduced. Only you can prevent wildfires, and that created this really bad historic fire suppression policy in the United States. On these, pretty much all of the United States is a fire dependent landscape. There are a lot of plants that love fire. Basically, what fire does is creates a disturbance in the soil for them. It helps disperse seeds better too by cultivating the soil. Anyway, so this history of fire suppression sort of made these landscapes ripe for wildfires. And what we want to not have is wildfires. We want to have fires that we can control. So, actually, fun fact for the listeners: the original phrase, let me make sure I get it right, was with Smokey Bear was only you can prevent forest fires, but we like forest fires. Forest fires are good. So a huge change in language. I don't know how recent it was to only you can prevent wildfires because we don't want wildfires because we can't control those. But that was a huge shift in language. So that's why you'll see a lot of people with the Mandela effect of, Smokey the Bear and Smokey Bear. That's a whole different one. But they remember only you can prevent forest fires. And now it's only you can prevent wildfires because we want people to be able to be comfortable with forest fires. So that's a little bit of
Yeah.
background about prescribed fire in the United States. So, how I would go about getting people to care about having it on their land, it kind of manifests in a few different ways. So, we try to do a variety of things to match kind of what maybe the audience would want. So that would be in forms of like digital media, so infographics, social media posts, trying to get, involved in engagement on our social media sites, different webinars that we can do to make it accessible for people who are virtual. But we do a lot of in-person workshops and trainings. So wildfire learn and burns that we do, and different burning demonstrations. We actually have an upcoming fire festival in Durham, which I know fire festival has a different connotation maybe for the
Sure.
common person.
Yeah.
But I've been told that fire festivals came before that one.
Okay.
And basically fire festivals have some burning demonstrations, but it's kind of like a state fair. So there are different booths, there's food, there's entertainment, basically trying to bring the community together to learn about prescribed fire, but to also, learn and make it safe. So I would say it manifests in a bunch of different ways. It depends on the audience you want. So maybe more general audience, to try to get them to be aware about prescribed fire, has our farthest reach through social media. And then with our workshops and our on the ground trainings, that helps fire practitioners and those who maybe want to implement fire on their landscape to improve habitat for wildlife or even their forest health as well.
Yeah, amazing. Have you like worked directly with like some of these controlled burns before?
Yeah, so I took a class at Auburn, got my Alabama Prescribed Burn Manager certification. So it involved going out on a lot of burns, creating burn plans. So you have to assess, there's a whole website that gives you fire weather. You have to make sure that your weather is within the range where a fire would not jump a line, or embers would fly to create a wildfire that's not controllable. You have to look at smoke dispersion as well, and you have to look and see how it'll affect, if you're near roads. You don't want to decrease visibility, or have anybody negatively, health wise impacted. So we have our high risk areas that you have to consider. Um, Anyways, I learned all of that and went on a bunch of burns, and then was able to help out where I could at Oklahoma State. And now, as part of my job, I actually will be going on a burn on Thursday. So, gonna go to a forest near Raleigh, and we're going to burn it and then do some pre and post evaluation to see if the burn worked, see if we need to implement more fire. We'll see what happens.
Very cool. So you're saying that I shouldn't try to do this in my backyard without any prior experience.
No, no, I would
Okay.
say I think you have a connection, so I can help you
Okay.
if you feel like you need to burn in your backyard. But there's a lot of questions about urban burning, and since we're becoming increasingly urbanized, that's a harder burn to do. Even these areas that still need to be burned, right? So this LA is that they had these fires are coming through, and they couldn't do prescribed burns because it's so close to houses. And they try to get fire on the ground as much as possible to create a more fire resistant landscape, and so that it doesn't go all the way down to these houses. But it's much harder in an urbanized environment as compared to maybe more of a heavily forested area where not as many people are, not as many houses are. So yeah,
Sure.
if you want to, just let me know if you want to burn for wildlife.
Sounds good.
Good.
Well,
Well,
I I
I
think we're
think we're
echoing a little.
echoing a little. Oh, did my
Tell
headphones
me.
die? Tell me.
I
Oh
think that they
no.
may
I think that
have.
they may have. Rest in
Yeah, that's
peace.
a
Yeah, that's
R.I.P.
a
Um,
uh,
well, that's all good. Nice. So, super interesting there. Tell me about working in Montana and collaring elk and working in that environment, because that seems just like really beautiful area, beautiful animals. So tell me about that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was an awesome opportunity to have because the joke is that I got to see the best of Montana and then didn't have to experience any of the winters and the harsh parts of it. So I have a very, rose colored glasses look of Montana. I know they do have some tough winters though. So Montana was really great because, I was backpacking for 2 weeks to pick up my trail cameras. And, I had 94 cameras across the site. I mean, I'm going up and down. These mountains had a couple of bear and moose scares, but we're fine. I got bluff charged by a mama moose. She had twins. I didn't know she had twins, to be clear. I just kind of, I walked up and we tried to like wait, but they're extremely protective animals just of themselves. When there's a mom, it gets to be even harder. And then had a bear near camp. But yeah, in terms of the collaring stuff, the collaring had been done actually before I got there. So the interesting thing about what happened with my project is that my advisor, who's now a professor, that was his postdoc. So they had been collared, and then he got hired in the middle of it as a professor. So I got to finish the project at the end, and then got to analyze all that data. But collaring, quick aside, I still got my collaring experience, and I got to collar pronghorn, mule deer, and whitetail fawns, which is a cute little experience where they ungulates. If the listeners don't know, they hide. They will not run from prey, especially the young. When they get older, they can catch some top speeds. But since they just bed down, what we'll do is when there's a birthing event, we have a sensor go off, and then we go find them. And so and then we just put the collars on and then leave them be. But it gets us really good information about survival and how they move, especially after the birthing events. But with big collaring that was done for this project, that involves, helicoptering, shooting what we call rocket nets. So basically just a huge, this sort of rocket net gun, and it goes, catches the deer, the elk, or the pronghorn.
Oh my God.
And then you try to make it as painless as possible. And you sort of just, if you think about like a belt, we call them hobbles. You put a belt around their legs so that they don't move, and then you put the collar on and you let them go. So really quickly. Sometimes with elk, depending on how big, like with female elk, you can still maybe rocket net them, but with bull elk, which, as you know, are huge, then maybe we tranquilize them like we had done with the deer at the deer lab. So yeah, it's just a super cool experience. You never get to be that up close with wildlife in your daily life. So I feel like I have this really unique experience. And then I got to live in the Montana mountains for 2 weeks and just pick up cameras and pretend that I was homesteading or something, So it was a ton of fun and such a just, dream opportunity to get to say that my study site was out in Montana. So really, really grateful for it.
Yeah, that's amazing. One thing that's kind of standing out to me there is that you had a like James Bond kind of gadget to entrap these animals with a rocket net like that. That's so crazy. And you're doing like from a helicopter. I don't know if you were in the helicopter like calling in like I don't
Oh my gosh,
like
yeah,
all of these.
they have rocket nets for, especially, I'm trying to think of a video I could send you so you can see it happening. They do it for pronghorn a lot, and the specialist helicopter guys, they get to do it. But then we can help collar if we want. It is so quick. It is just the speed and accuracy with which they can do it is so cool. They do feel like I feel like they feel like James Bond.
Dude,
So cool.
that's like such a nutty invention. Like, well, what if we just like we had a net that we could shoot from afar and we could we could grab them up that way. And then like everyone's like, yeah, like that would be fun if we could. But then they just like went and made the thing to do it that and are using it
Exactly.
to track their data and stuff. That's amazing. Um
Mm-hmm.
well tell me about your thesis and like the process of like creating it, the writing process, research, and defense. Because I have a thesis, but mine was undergrad, and I feel like it's kind of a baby thesis. In that way, it doesn't feel like a real big deal kind of one. Like I was using pre-existing data, and I had it. No, I'm not discounting my experience or anybody else's who had like an undergrad thesis, but I do feel like um, I do feel like it's a different thing entirely. So tell me about doing that.
Yeah, well, I didn't know you had an undergrad thesis, so congratulations on your work. I don't know if you had to defend it. That's a huge thing that I know a lot of people are scared about. But regarding a thesis, and especially with wildlife, usually you have two chapters. So you try to have these two unique research questions given the data that you collect, your study species, your study site. So a big topic in wildlife right now is this human wildlife conflict, how we can mitigate it. You know, if we understand human wildlife conflict, what are the implications of how we can lower the spread of disease and, specifically zoonotic diseases and all of that. So that's kind of how
Well,
my
sorry, what was that word that you said?
zoonotic diseases.
Okay, yeah, what does that mean? I don't know that one. I just wanted to.
Oh, yes. No, you're good. Zoonotic diseases are basically, and I'll make sure I say it right because I'm not a disease ecologist, but diseases that started from animals and transferred to humans, but were through different means, but basically started zoo. If you remember zoo animals,
Yes.
but yeah, basically started from animals and sort of different how our prions or other different proteins got rewritten, and now it made the jump to humans. So
Yeah.
COVID-19 is a zoonotic disease. Um, we don't classify CWD as a zoonotic disease yet because we hope it doesn't jump the species barrier. But that would be a good example. CWD being, if the listeners don't know, chronic wasting disease. So that is the disease. If you see those viral videos of the zombie deer, that's what happens. Is it gets into their brain, starts as a prion, and then makes them sort of zombified, and then they don't act like normal deer.
Mm,
All that to
pretty
say,
cool.
that's sort of where the need for this project came. And so, a background on how we sort of get to this point is most, if not all, master's and PhD dissertations and theses are funded by grants. So you figure out this need for research and then you apply for a grant. So that's this need for human wildlife interaction and figuring out how they interact in these low use areas was the impetus for the grant. So they got that grant, didn't have to do any of that work. I appreciate all their hard work doing that grant proposal. Got to be the one hired on the grant. Um, and so the beginning of your thesis is sort of like spitballing different questions you want to ask, because how elk respond to human recreation is a huge thing, right? There's different ways we can look at it. Responding to what types of recreation. So is it hunting or is it hiking? Is it both? Is it off-road vehicles? Is it motorized versus non-motorized disturbances? Um, and at the beginning of your thesis, you want to do everything as a grad student, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Yeah, all of these sound great, but part of the research and thesis writing process is really narrowing those questions down. And sort of that started at the beginning. Once you have those questions down, my project was a little bit unique in that part of the data had already been collected, but I went out to finish the rest of the data collection. And sometimes with other projects, then they go out and do data. So finished up data collection, and then there's analyzing the data. So for my data, that was twofold, because I had trail cameras, so I have a bunch of pictures, but I got to ID everything in it. So I put it into a program. We used some AI actually to filter out some of our blank images, and then we had technicians tag the rest. So then you get these big Excel files of here's what animals we saw this day, at what camera site, at what location. So then you run through all that data, you filter your collar data because I had my camera trap data, so photos, and then collar data, which were locations taken every hour. Luckily, that had sort of been delivered to me, so I had that to work with. And now that you have your questions, you have to figure out how you're going to analyze it. So my first question in my thesis was how do elk respond to human recreation, specifically hunting and summer recreation? So sort of this consumptive versus non-consumptive question, Do they perceive hunters as predators, or do they perceive all humans as predators? How does that
Okay.
manifest? And so, sort of when I was looking at the collar data, I did what was called a resource selection function. So at different times of the year, I figured out where they were selecting for. Usually this would be like habitat, forage, all of that, and I looked to see if it changed from year to year. And in these areas that we had these known human presences, so concentrated spots such as like a trailhead or the entrance to sort of the area where vehicles could drive in. We did a distance to calculation, and then we put that as a covariate, meaning like a variable that may predict elk resource selection, into the function. And then saw if it was one significant or not. So if we remember back to our stats class, our p values, love them and hate them, you know.
Yeah.
One, if it was significant, and the level of effect, and if that changed from year to year. So getting way too into the weeds, but that's an example of one of my chapters. I will not get into chapter 2 because that is very dense, but I got to my 2 chapters, and then a lot of your process after you craft a question, you figure out how to analyze it, and it sounds a lot easier when you say it, but you know, it's a 2.5-year process. Then you have your answer, and you have to figure out why it matters. So elk responded more strongly to humans during the hunting season. So what does that mean? And what does that mean for future research? So there was all of that writing. And for me, what was the weird thing was that there was no like interpretation, there's no right answer. So I use what I know and I say what I think happened. And then I defend it. So you write up your thesis, and then you have this big thesis defense where you do a presentation of everything you learned, and what your results were, and then you go into a room with your committee. I think it was 4 or 5 hours, and then they grill you. They grill you about what you did. It's nice with a thesis because you're only defending your project. In a PhD, it's almost like you're defending all of ecology. You know, you have to be a huge expert. That's why you get the DR in front of your name.
Yeah.
But it's a grilling. So yeah, it's a great process, and I learned to trust the process. And a lot of my experience was that everything can't all be done at once, and things take time, which is someone who is anxious and impatient. Hated that. Hated that so much. But yeah, it was a really cool experience, and then it's just done, right? You know, it felt like so much of my life, but I think I saw you a couple weeks after I defended, and you or Tabby asked me how it went, and I was like, oh, right. Like that happened. I was just, it's so much high stress, and then it's done. And then
Yeah.
I left Oklahoma and went to North Carolina. So it's such a blur right at the end. But hopefully that encapsulates the master's experience, at least how I experienced it.
Yeah, totally. I could totally see how it would just kind of drops off. Like you've been doing this for so long, like you're waiting on bits and pieces. Like there's so many different functions and features, and I'm sure different reports that you're running and data collection and
Mm-hmm.
all of this stuff. You're like, okay, I'm waiting on this variable next and plugging it in and all that, and then all of a sudden it's just done, and you're like, oh wow, that was that was crazy. I can't believe I did that. Yeah, no, that's amazing. Um, the defense piece feels really really difficult to me, just because
Yeah.
you've got to present yourself as an expert, and you are. But like you've got to remember so many different components. Like you're remembering your research, and then that's other pieces, and defending why it's important, and all that kind of stuff. It's intimidating. And proud of you for doing it.
Thank you. The
Um,
imposter syndrome was strong, but you
I,
have to you have to fight through it. And you have to remember little things like, do you remember a type 2 and a type 1 error in statistics?
ooh, no, I don't. Remind
It's
me.
okay. I couldn't remember it almost like day before. And so you have to review even your basic stuff. You know it, but in high stress, you know. And luckily, what I had to remember is that they want you to succeed. So they're not here to gotcha. So that that made me feel supported in a way, is to have such a supportive committee that wanted me to succeed. So yeah.
Yeah, they weren't like tripping you up. They're like, ladies and gentlemen, we got him. Like,
Oh my
no.
God. That's
It's
another
a,
vocal tip.
it's
um,
a, yeah.
they they did sort of troll me a little bit at the end. I will say they got through the important questions. And one of my committee members said, I want the last question. I want the last question. I said, okay.
Okay.
And he turned to me and he said, what is the smallest particle? I was like, I studied elk in Montana. What do you mean? I can go back to chemistry. And I said, well, I'll let you answer. Do you have a thought of what it might be?
Uh, smallest particle. I don't think that it's right, but it's the smallest one that I can think of. It's an electron. But like, I feel like there's some
You're
like
close.
I feel like there's some like weirder answer that's like it's beyond like just the basic like neutron, proton, electron. Like I feel like there's like a quasar or so.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. That like there's
You're
something that
close.
feels like
You're
it's, yeah.
close. You're so
Okay.
close. Yeah,
I
I
don't know
said
it.
photon because
Okay.
I was so tired and I was like, oh, well, I know it's not atom, so like photon, proton, quark. If you remember quark,
I don't.
it's he said it and I was like, oh yeah, I remember the one time I learned that in high school. But he was just like, it was just a fun thing to do at the end. And the committee members that I had, like one of them had been on the committee for one of the people that was on my committee, and so he had asked that question. So continuing the legacy of trolling, if you will.
That's fun.
But yeah, and I don't remember any of the actual hard questions they asked me. I just remember quark. I'll never forget it now. I won't. I'll never forget it.
There you go. That's it. Well, we learn something new every day. If you've learned nothing in this podcast, at least you know that the smallest particle is a quark.
Yep.
And that's worth something. Maybe you'll pull it out on a game show somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Never say I didn't get you anything. Well, I've run out of questions here, but thankfully we don't have to do this experience alone. And I have a question from our previous guest. So this is the tradition. I'll give you the same opportunity. You can ask a question to whoever comes after you. But our previous guest was Leah Mulligan, and her question was, if you had to get a tattoo right this second, what would you get and why?
Oh my gosh. Oh, you try to think of something that you would be fine on your body for the rest of your life. But also you don't want something that will phase out by, 10 years, right? Shout out to the people who got Divergent and Hunger Games tattoos. I've seen a lot of that on Instagram recently. Which they, support. It's what you needed at the time. I support you. I do.
Yeah, no doubt. I think so scarily of like some of like, what would I have if you like asked me this question and like I had to follow through with it at like different points in my life, like what would it have looked like? And I don't know, it's a little bit scary.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad I wasn't able to get a tattoo at the age that I loved the Hunger Games when it came out, because maybe I would be dealing with the ramifications of that. So yeah, I think so there's like the basic answer, right? And then I know I could live with, which was mountains. I think I would either do like, I would do something specific to me. So maybe like my study site, or while I was in Montana, I took a 3-day jaunt and I drove through Yellowstone and Grand Tetons. And I think the Tetons are a really cool mountain range. So maybe them. There's also this, if there was a cool way to do like an elk shed or elk antlers that aren't, tacky. I don't know if you can do them non-tacky, or people think you're just some avid hunter. But like, I know my friend is getting, she studies turkeys and she's getting a fan. So the turkey fan, it's like what they fluff up. And so it'd be cool to have my study species. But it has to be done right, I guess, is the caveat for that answer.
Yeah, I could see in kind of a gothic style of like specifically like the shedding. but yeah, and I'm sure that there's, an actual tattoo artist out there that could put together something really nice. But yeah, no, the study species, that's a great idea. I think you should get the rocket launcher with the net. That would be
Yeah.
that would be kind of sick. So
A trail camera.
yeah, it's just like an elk with like a big bulging eyes and like the net behind it, and like some guy with like like sunglasses like in the helicopter with like a glint like coming off of it, and he's like just really nailing it. It's all I can think about like ever since we've talked about it.
Well, I'll tell you, when I told people so what I used to say before I learned that I needed to explain what I did at Auburn is I told people I dart deer. And so they thought I had like a blow dart and was at deer.
Sick.
So yeah, maybe me running after an elk with a blow dart or a rocket launcher would be really great.
Nice. I think playing darts with deer could be another good option there. But that feels that feels a little, I don't, there's a lot of elements going on there. But that's yeah, I dig it. It's but the chasing after them, that's a fun visual with the blue.
Yeah, and like, would it be me because it's on my body?
Yeah, I don't want a
like
smaller version of myself.
Yeah, that feels conceited, but
yeah,
or should it be someone random?
But like, do I want someone else too? Like,
yeah, they're on my.
Know.
You're right. You know what? You're so right. They're on my body. What if it's another elk chasing the elk?
Oh, nice. That's good.
I don't know if that's like the symbolism of that, but I feel like it could be interpreted as really deep.
Mm-hmm.
Is an elk after another elk?
Could be good. They're territorial, so that who's to say? Nothing is coming together where I can put this together really nicely, really neatly. But there's something there. Well, exactly. What question do you want to ask to whoever comes next?
Ooh, okay. I would say, okay. Go with me on this. If you could only wear one outfit for the rest of your life, so we're talking shoes, socks, pants, shirt, dress if you want, what would you wear and why? Because you have to be prepared for everything, right? What is the most prepared outfit that you could have for the rest of your life?
Nice. I'm just thinking of like the Jimmy Neutron, or like Timmy Turner, like same shirt, like every single day situation. Funny story. I may have told this on the podcast before, but I had a Jimmy Neutron themed birthday when I was like 4. And my mom made a bunch of the shirts like with the symbol on it. And so like in kindergarten, I wore multiples of that shirt like in the same week. And my teacher was like, "Hey, he doesn't seem dirty, but it is like the same shirt." My mom's like, "Listen," my mom's like, "Listen, he's clean, he's safe. He just has 30 of this shirt." So,
and he's not gonna stop. Was that the birthday party with the rocket?
Yeah,
the infamous wooden rocket. Where is that thing?
I don't know. I think Max has it. I had it in my dorm freshman year. But then awesome. I think that he got it after that. So I think that Max has it.